World War I was a massive, brutal conflict that shook the entire planet between 1914 and 1918. On one side were the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. On the other, the Allied Powers, Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Romania, Japan, and later, the United States. Fueled by new weapons, old rivalries, and the nightmare of trench warfare, the war unleashed destruction like the world had never seen. By the time it ended, the Central Powers were defeated, and over 16 million people were dead. Europe was shattered. The world would never be the same. Europe wasn't peaceful before 1914, it was a pressure cooker. After Germany unified in the 1870s and took land from France in the Franco-Prussian War, the balance of power shifted. Germany was rising fast, and its neighbors felt threatened. Nations scrambled to form alliances. France sided with Russia. Germany stood behind Austria-Hungary. Everyone was watching everyone else, armed and anxious. Then, in June 1914, in Bosnia, the match was lit. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist who wanted independence for Slavs under Austro-Hungarian rule. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, blamed Serbia and declared war. Serbia called on Russia. Russia's alliance pulled in France. Germany invaded Belgium, dragging in Britain. Within 1 week, a local crisis had turned into a world war. Germany had a plan. It was called the Schlieffen Plan, a fast strike through Belgium to crush France in the west, then pivot east to face Russia before its massive army could fully mobilize. A quick, clean win. That was the idea. But war doesn't follow plans. As German troops stormed through Belgium and pushed deep into France, they got close, too close, to Paris. Then came the Battle of the Marne. French and British forces stopped the advance. The dream of a quick victory vanished. Both sides dug in, literally. Trench lines stretched from the North Sea to Switzerland, and the Western Front froze into a brutal stalemate. Meanwhile, the war widened. Japan joined the Allies and took over German outposts in China and the Pacific. In the Middle East, the Ottoman Empire sided with Germany and Austria-Hungary, opening new fronts to protect vital oil routes and the Suez Canal. What began as a European conflict was now a true world war. On the Western Front, war turned into a slow, grinding nightmare. Trenches stretched from the North Sea to Switzerland, filled with mud, rats, and fear. Machine guns and artillery made every advance deadly. Poison gas added a new kind of terror. Battles like Verdun and the Somme killed millions, yet the front barely moved. At sea, the Battle of Jutland, the war's biggest naval clash, ended without a clear winner. In the air, planes moved from scouting to combat and bombing. The skies became a new battlefield, and across the world, soldiers from colonies and dominions, India, Canada, Africa, and more, joined the fight. World War I was no longer just Europe's war. On the Eastern Front, Russia launched multiple offensives from 1914 to 1916, but failed to break through tough German lines. The fighting was brutal and progress slow. To help Russia, the Allies tried to open a supply route through the Dardanelles Strait. They then invaded the Gallipoli Peninsula, hoping to knock the Ottomans out of the war. But fierce resistance turned both efforts into costly failures. In 1915, Italy left its alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary and joined the Allies, hoping for land gains. But 12 battles along the Isonzo River brought little success. Meanwhile, Bulgaria sided with the Central Powers and invaded Serbia, opening a new front in the Balkans. Britain used its powerful navy to blockade Germany, cutting off vital supplies. In response, Germany turned to submarine warfare. Their U-boats began sinking Allied and even neutral ships, including vessels carrying American goods and passengers. Then came the Zimmermann telegram. In 1917, Britain intercepted a secret message from Germany to Mexico, promising U.S. territory in exchange for joining the war. When the news broke, it shocked the American public. That same year, the United States entered the war, tipping the balance and turning a European conflict into a truly global one. By 1917, Russia was falling apart. Years of military failures, food shortages, and growing unrest ignited the Bolshevik Revolution. The Tsar was overthrown, and a new Soviet government took power, one that had no interest in continuing the war. In early 1918, they signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany, ending the fighting on the Eastern Front. This was a huge win for Germany. Now, with Russia out, they rushed to move troops west for one last massive offensive. They hoped to break through before American soldiers arrived in large numbers, but the Allies were prepared, and Germany's final gamble was running out of time. The Ottoman Empire, despite its early victory at Gallipoli, began to crumble. British-backed Arab forces rose up across the Middle East, and by October 1918, the Ottomans signed a treaty to exit the war. Austria-Hungary was falling apart from within. Ethnic tensions exploded, nationalist movements gained ground, and the empire disintegrated. It surrendered soon after. Germany stood alone, exhausted, blockaded, and surrounded. With revolution brewing at home and defeat inevitable, it agreed to an armistice on November 11, 1918, bringing World War I to an end. World War I didn't just end empires, it reshaped the world. The Spanish flu swept across a weakened globe. America emerged stronger than ever, and four great empires, the German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian, collapsed. In their place, new nations were born. Poland, Finland, Turkey, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and more. Germany took the blame. The Treaty of Versailles forced it to disarm, give up territory, and pay massive reparations. Many Germans saw it as a national humiliation, and the resentment would come back with a vengeance. The League of Nations was created to keep peace, but history would prove peace needs more than promises. The First World War didn't just bring a brutal conflict to an end, it had redrawn the world, but it hadn't rebuilt it. The peace that followed was fragile and incomplete, leaving behind resentment, economic turmoil, and political chaos. The Treaty of Versailles may have officially ended the war, but it also fueled anger in Germany, instability across Europe, and set off a chain reaction of consequences that no one fully saw coming. In many ways, the world didn't recover, it just shifted. And in that uneasy space between wars, new ideologies rose, old tensions simmered, and the stage was slowly being set for an even greater disaster. If this helped you finally see how all the pieces fit, simply, clearly, and without turning into a dry history lecture, leave a comment below and tell us what other stories you want to see next. And if you're into history that actually makes sense, go ahead and subscribe to Historify. We're just getting started.